This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Solutions, the leading iGaming PAM platform with a modular approach, including many benefits like a fast, secure, and scalable API-based platform, integrated with all major third-party products and services. Make sure you head over to Pragmatic Solutions and join our smart thinking.
And we are live. Angus Nisbet, VP Gaming of BetMGM. Great to have you here today, Angus.
Really
How are you doing?
Yeah, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Thank you. But I want to start today by going back in time a little bit to 2019, the Sahara Desert, Morocco. That was the year where our dear guest Angus here completed Marathon Disabled, 250 kilometers, 6 days through the Sahara Desert. That just to give some perspective, this is 6 marathons through the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you decided that this is something you wanted to do without being paid an enormous amount of money?
It sounds crazy, doesn't it, when you hear the numbers? But so I like running. I'm not a very fast runner, but I'm an enthusiastic runner. And you know, I've done a few sort of single-day marathons in my time. I've done the London Marathon a few times. I've run the New York Marathon and Malaga and a few others. And I guess, you know, some people would call it a midlife crisis, I suppose. I just fancied... I was doing a charity walk through the Sahara Desert with when I worked for Coral Interactive, and we were raising money for a gambling charity, and we were also raising money for children with cancer. And this was 100 kilometers over 5 days, but it was really easy. You know, you stopped when you wanted to stop. You had really nice dinners every night, and it was hot and everything, but it was actually quite easy. And we walked, one of the days we walked past the route of the Marathon des Sables, and someone was telling me about it, and it just sort of triggered my interest, and I thought, you know, I'd love to do that one day. And without going too deep about it, one of my very good friends was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2018, and it just kind of, you know, made me think, right, we're not here forever, we haven't got long, and if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it. So I did it to raise money for children with cancer. So I spoke to them, and they said, yeah, if you raise £4,000, then they'll pay for the place. And I ended up raising, you know, I think about £15,000 in the end. So that was great. And I applied thinking it would take. I'd read a lot about it, watched a lot of videos, and I thought it would take a couple of years before I had a place, because it was always oversubscribed. And they came back straight away saying, "Oh, you've got a place next year." So, so that was that. So I, exactly. I knuckled down, and I was living in Spain at the time. I know you're in Malta, so you'll get it. It was actually really good training. I was at the top of the top. I lived at the top of a hill, and it was kind of 6 kilometers down the hill to the local bar. And so, you know, my training was running down and running back up. Exactly, the aid station. Exactly. So actually, the training was pretty good. Running in the heat, I was pretty comfortable with at that point. So so it was unbelievable. I mean, you know, you do these things as well. You get it. It's ultimately, for me, it's about raising money. And you know, I've been lucky enough to partner with a lot of charities during my career in gaming, and whether it's Children with Cancer, whether it's Great Ormond Street Hospital, or Get Kids Going, or Whiz Kids, or whoever, you know, I've raised money for all of them. And I think I've raised over £100,000 personally for these charities over the last sort of 20 years. So it's great. You know, it's something that's really, really the yin to my yang, if you like. It keeps me sane. But no, it was good. It was good fun. I can't believe it's 4 years ago. I can't believe it. We were very lucky. We had, I think there was 20% dropout when I did it. So 1,000 people started and 800 people finished. And then 2 years later, which was a COVID-affected year, they had 50% dropout because they had some sort of stomach bug in the camp. Wow. So yeah, it's pretty bleak. You forgot to mention you have to carry all your supplies on your back as well. Not the tent, but everything else. All your food, all your clothes. Everything.
And there's no aid stations?
There's checkpoints every sort of 10 kilometres where you fill up with water. So you don't have to carry. You carry enough water to get you from aid station to aid station. But there's no. It's completely self-sufficient in terms of food and everything like that. So it was a life-changing experience. I'd recommend it to anybody, absolutely anybody, and particularly the Marathon des Sables, because the time limits are very generous. You're not going to get timed out. As long as you stay healthy, you'll finish. There was a lady who did it with me who had 2 prosthetic legs, and she had to change her legs every time she got to a sand dune. So if she was on the flat, she could have one set of legs. If she was in the sand dune, she could have another set of legs. So she was quicker than me, but I'd catch her up as she was changing her legs. So we got to know each other pretty well during the week. So, but you meet lifelong friends, and it was incredible. It was incredible.
Absolutely amazing, Angus, and great to hear that it's for a good cause
always.
as well, as you're doing this. So on to another form of ultra marathon, which is launching on kind of an online sports betting, online gambling operator in the US is also a bit of an ultra marathon through the Sahara Desert, because you run through a long stretch of time, difficult, and hopefully there's an oasis at the end here for the industry. But I want to start, obviously, Angus, you're the VP of the gaming vertical of BetMGM, so not the sport betting side, but rather the online gambling side of things. And BetMGM on the gambling side had really been a standout in the last couple of years, taking the pole position in terms of market share. And the fact that you won the Online Casino Operator of the Year from SBC and EDR is obviously a testament to the incredible work that you guys have done over at BetMGM. What do you attribute the success to that BetMGM, the casino side, has had in the last couple of years?
It's a really good question. I mean, first of all, I've been with the business for nearly a year now, so a lot of that credit goes to the guys who've been there longer than me, the team that I inherited. They're just, the culture of BetMGM encourages good people to thrive, and I think that's, we've recruited good people in good positions, and a lot of the product work, a lot of the technical work, a lot of the focus on that area is on the sports betting side of the business as we develop our product. And I think, to your point around the ultra marathon piece, I think from a sports betting point of view, I think that's definitely the case, because you have a European product in many cases, and you have to work out American markets, and how do you work out the market for the NBA draft, as an example, or all these things that are new to me. But I'm very pleased that I'm on the gaming side of the business, because I think what BetMGM did really, really well is they focused on premium and quality content, and making sure that the relationships that we have with our suppliers, our content suppliers, both in-house and third party, those relationships are second to none. They're best. They're excellent, and whether it's, Aristocrat that we've gone live with recently, or whether it's, all the other suppliers that we work with, from IGT to Light and Wonder to even, and to the smaller suppliers as well, the work that Ollie Bartlett and his team have done is phenomenal. They've built up huge relationships and a real focus on a steady stream of exclusive content. And I think in some respects we were ahead of the game slightly there. And the fact that DraftKings and FanDuel and others are now stating that this year they're really focusing on online casino as a focus point for them is
right.
Is sort of testament to what we've done. I think that it's not easy though. It's not as easy. It's easy to say it. It's not so easy to do it. There's a lot of work that's gone in, and it's a lot about relationships and people. But I think the content's great. The way we've dealt with our players is great. We've got a really good VIP scheme. Our VIPs are very satisfied when we ask them, how they're doing. We carry out regular surveys with our players. I think I saw a statistic last week actually that 99% of our players that we surveyed thought our gaming content was either good or excellent. So, when I heard that in the meeting, the guy that runs the gaming team was like, right, I've got to find that 1% and work out what we're doing wrong. And that's the attitude.
That's the
attitude. There's no one's resting on their laurels. No one's taking anything for granted. And I think also, I think we'll talk about omni-channel, I'm sure, as we go through the podcast, but the brand that we have is the best in the world when it comes to leisure and entertainment. I mean, there's nothing like the MGM brand for being synonymous with entertainment and leisure and casinos and Vegas and everything like that. So that gives us a really good starting point with players, because you have trust and heritage, but you have to earn the right to achieve success with that brand. And I think that's what we've done really well. But we're only just starting. That's the exciting thing. We've got so much to do and so much in the roadmap and so many plans that it's a really exciting time to be working in the business.
Let's talk about the omnichannel approach, as you point out here. But MGM as a parent brand is obviously an extremely strong brand, particularly over in the US. How do you leverage that brand into your omnichannel solution? Like, how do you leverage the database that MGM has to kind of convert those players into online?
Yeah, so I would say, I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of omnichannel work throughout my career. In the UK, I worked very closely with the Rank Group, who are the biggest, casino and bingo business in the UK. I obviously worked really closely with Gala when Gala had retail casinos and bingo clubs. So, I was thinking about this earlier because I thought you'd ask the question, and I think the best way to answer it is that there's really three areas you need to look at to succeed in the omni-channel arena. There's three areas. One of which is brand. You have to have a brand, and clearly, if you have a brand like MGM that's synonymous with entertainment and leisure, that's a real advantage, because of its history, and history hopefully gives you trust with the player. So it's the same with Mecca in the bingo business in the UK. It's the same with Grosvenor with casinos in the UK. These are businesses that people have a relationship with, and they've been to them, their parents have been to them, their grandparents have been to them in many cases. So when you land in Las Vegas, same with Atlantic City, same with Detroit, whatever, you think MGM, you think leisure, and you think entertainment. And that gives us a huge starting point, but it's just a starting point. So you need a brand. You then need a framework for success. So you need to know what success looks like. So you need to know what your promotional strategy is going to be. You need to have a games roadmap that incorporates retail content and digital content and looks familiar to the player when they arrive. You need to have a single view of the player. So you need to have a data and a business intelligence solution that's aligned. There might be two separate systems because you've got retail has developed over the years and digital has developed over the years. But you need to work out how those two align. And then you need to think about the people. And by that I mean there's a what I found over my career is that we have to be very careful in the digital space to be aware of the experience and the heritage that all of our colleagues have in the retail space. So do you know what I mean? You can sit there in your ivory tower, you can run a digital business, you get loads of money coming in, it's suddenly the gold rush and everyone's playing online. We have to be very cognizant of the fact that our colleagues who work in our casinos in Vegas and the other cities in the US have been doing this for a long, long time, and they know what they're doing, and they're very successful at what they do. And I think the last pillar of omni-channel success is to have your organizational structure set up to allow trust between the key personnel. So you have to have key decision makers on both sides of the business, and they have to know each other and trust each other, because ultimately, retail has a P&L, we have a P&L, they have their own EBITDA targets to hit, we have our EBITDA targets to hit. There's a danger that if you take loads of retail players and get them playing online, then the retail numbers could go down. So are we going to share data? All that kind of stuff. If you build relationships, I keep coming to the word people, Pierre, because it's so important. And, I was in Las Vegas last week, and I spent the whole week with our colleagues who work in retail, and they're amazing. They're amazing, and they all understand the challenge that we have. We understand the challenge they have. And to succeed, you have to meet in the middle and say, right, I'll give you a very simple example. If you have a VIP player who is, plays week in and week out in the Bellagio casino, and they happen to live in Michigan, and we persuade them to come and play online, and all of a sudden they don't go to the Bellagio casino quite as often because they're playing online in Michigan, we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to the guys who introduced us to that player have to be recognised for that revenue, and you have to have an umbrella view of the revenue that's coming into to both P&Ls to be able to make the correct decisions, and that needs senior people involved in the decisions. It needs alignment at C-level. It needs alignment at senior manager level, and it needs alignment all the way down to the guys on the floor to make sure that their remuneration package, so their bonus, isn't impacted by something that they're being told to do with their players, if that makes sense. So all of this comes down to the structure of the teams, but ultimately the relationships that we're building between the two businesses of retail and digital. And I've seen it work in various places in the UK, and I've seen it not work in various places in the UK, and it will work for us. I mean, we're early on in the journey, but But as an example, we had a load of our VIP players were at an event in the Borgata Casino in Atlantic City last weekend. So on Saturday night just gone, a load of our online players, we take them to the retail resort. They stay, they play, and that's brilliant. So the retail resort love it because there's revenue stream coming in for them. Our players love it because it's extension of the brand. And ultimately, as a player, there needs to be a recognition that you're on one or the other. So if you're a BetMGM VIP and you arrive at a casino in Vegas, there needs to be an understanding that you're a BetMGM VIP. And what does that mean? That means you jump the queue for check-in. That means you get an extra free drink, whatever it might be. You get tickets to the show, or you just get recognized, because ultimately it's about recognition. So like I say, that we're getting there, but it's ultimately it's around the people who are working on the various parts of the business and being aligned and having relationships, and they do. It's going really well.
Yeah, getting people within the organization, different verticals with different P&Ls to pull the same rope, essentially, which may sound easier than what it is, especially perhaps when you get to the size of an organization like MGM, where there's not like the CEO who can be kind of very involved personally and dictate and so on and so forth. Like getting that machine to work together.
Difficult. Yeah,
it makes
it's a challenge because if you have, I met with the a great colleague of mine last week, and she's in charge of the outbound calling team, the team that call customers, sort of the level below VIPs,
right.
And each of her colleagues has, I think, 80 calls a day to make, and they are measured on bringing people into the casino. That's their measurement of success, and an uplift in spend when people come to the casino. So how do we align with that? So if you suddenly say to these people, okay, great, can you just mention BetMGM while you're on the call? And they're going to be like, well, I can, but that's going to take up my time, and then I need to still get my 80 calls done. So it's just being aware of what we're asking people to do, being aware of the expectations on both sides of the business, and just aligning at a senior level.
Absolutely, yeah. So Angus, obviously you have a history on the European side of the industry, which is vastly different on the North American side, and you joined BetMGM a year ago. What were the key differences when you entered the North American market? Was it a shock to you with the history that you have working in the European side, or
it was
do you see more similarities than differences, or can you talk about the differences between the two markets?
It was a pleasant shock, Pierre, is what I would say. It was a pleasant shock because first of all the culture and the energy within BetMGM is something that I haven't seen in a long time. I mean, it is a young sector, and it's a young business, and it's a business that's doing very well, but it's it's really infectious. When I went to New Jersey for the first time, and we've got these amazing offices that overlook the Hudson River, and everybody you meet is totally engaged and enthused, and that that comes from the top down. That comes from Adam's leadership style, which is very impressive, and we can talk about that in more detail. But then you go to Vegas, and as you land into Vegas, and you've got the Luxor, the pyramid there of the Luxor Casino, there's now a massive BetMGM logo on that glass, as you land, so you see the brand, and I was wearing some merchandise, obviously, when I arrived in Vegas, and you just get a feel for the scale of the brand within the resort of Vegas, and the lady in front of me they were asking her all sorts of questions, immigration, why are you here, what are you doing, so on, 5 minutes worth of questions. And I walked up and I gave them my passport, and they said, oh, hello, what are you doing in Vegas? I said, oh, I work with BetMGM. And the smiles came on the guy's face. He's like, oh, I'm a MGM rewards player. You need to get me some more points. I need to get that dinner at MGM Grand, whatever. And it happens every time, Pierre. I'm not joking. Every time. If you wear BetMGM logo, it's like a special pass around Vegas. And that's a big difference to the UK and European market. There's a real, I'm new to working in the States. I'm new to working, with Americans as a population of people, but they love the fact that gaming and gambling is part of the leisure and entertainment sector, and it's there's no there's no shame in it. I think in the UK it's almost a little bit sometimes like a dirty secret. It's almost, and I don't include bingo with that, because I spent a lot of time, working in bingo, and bingo, everyone who works in bingo clubs are just wonderful, and everyone who works in casinos are wonderful. But if you go back to when I started my career, if you wanted to go to a casino, you'd have to go the night before, show your passport, and then come back 24 hours later because of the regulation. You weren't allowed in that night. So the whole thing was a little bit mysterious. And, when I go to Vegas now, and I've been to Vegas a lot throughout my career, it's a wonderful place, but it's changing. And so why is it, how is it changing? It's growing up as a city. So now, if you look at the sports is now synonymous with entertainment, which is synonymous with Vegas, which is synonymous with MGM. So that circle, last week you could go and see Adele, you could go and see Katy Perry's there in a couple of weeks, you could go and see Rod Stewart, Cirque du Soleil, David Copperfield, Penn and Teller, whoever, all the entertainment is second to none, always has been since the days of Frank Sinatra and what have you. But now you can also go and see NFL, you've got the Las Vegas Raiders play there. You can go and see baseball next year with the Oakland A's. You can go and see top class ice hockey with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. You've got women's basketball. Have got the top team in the country now, with the Las Vegas Aces, I think they're called. And you've got soccer there as well. So they're building a whole new stadium for the Oakland A's. You've got the Grand Prix there in November, and I saw some early mock-ups of what the Bellagio are going to be doing for seating outside the Bellagio for the Grand Prix, and it's going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be mind-blowing. They're going to be driving past the fountains that are going to be in sync to the music that's playing, to the cars, and this is a 10-year deal. It's not a one-year deal. So there's 10 Grand Prix in Vegas, and you've also got Super Bowl. I think it's Super Bowl 58 is there next February. So, when I flew home on Friday, there was a EDC, an electronic dance conference, not conference.
Yeah, Daisy, electronic
massive
Daisy.
rave, yeah. It's like massive carnival, thank you, yeah. 30,000 kids, 18 to whatever. So, they can't drink or gamble. But the casinos, because of the hotels around the casinos and the pools and the whatever, they're totally ready for these guys to come and have a great time. Yeah. So you've got, to go back to your question, I always said that I worked in gaming and leisure in the UK. But everyone always looked at me and went, well, you don't really, do you? You work in gambling. You go to America and you say, I work in gaming and leisure. I work for casinos. I go, oh, yeah, great. MGM are fantastic. Yeah. No, and it's totally synonymous with that. And I think that's the big difference. And I don't think that will change, because that's ingrained in the culture over there. I think that where we have an opportunity to learn from the UK is, around responsible gambling and affordability, which are absolutely key to the growth of the sector. It's the one thing the black market, or the grey market they don't have the checks, they don't have the processes in place that we have, they don't have the awards that we've won for compliance and what have you. So, the UK, that sector has evolved over time, and what was acceptable in the year 2000 is now not acceptable in the year 2023, and rightly so, because we've matured as a sector. So, as an example, if in the year 2000 someone won a big jackpot on a slot machine on your site, let's say they won £100,000, that was fine as a source of funds until they lost that £100,000. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you'd say, right, so
Yeah. I remember
Pierre's
that.
playing. Can Pierre afford to play? Well, yeah, of course he can afford to play. He won £100,000 from us last week.
He won the 100K. Yeah.
Now we've matured and rightly so, as I say correctly, that actually you might have spent that £100,000 on something else, and you're now spending money you can't afford. So we need to be more rigorous. We need to be more thorough with our affordability and responsible gambling practices, which we are. We certainly are at BetMGM, and I know the other major operators are as well. So.
But I want to ask about that actually, Angus, on the responsible gambling side. There is a quite lively debate on that side in the US, particularly looking at the mistakes that the European operators went through in the 2010s and the backlash that led to regulatory wise and from the players and so on. Do you think you're there yet in terms of RG in the US industry, but more specifically within BetMGM?
Yeah, I've got
perhaps, or is there more work to be done?
There's always more work to be done, but I'll give you a couple of examples of things why I think we're on the right track. Okay, so again, go back to the UK, the 2000s, 2010s, and look at some of the cases that have come up. If you look at how they've evolved, it would be, there's been an investigation. You allowed a player to lose a lot of money. What were the checks that you put in place around affordability and whatever? Okay. That then goes back to whoever did it, which is normally the VIP team or the gaming team maybe. So you potentially had a slight lack of ownership, okay, at a senior level, because again, you're reinventing what happened before. It's very difficult. But if you look at what we do at BetMGM as an example, we have what we call the Responsible Gambling Council. Okay. If you're on the leadership team at BetMGM, then you are automatically on the Responsible Gambling Council. It's a must. So I'm on the Responsible Gambling Council. There are 3 co-chairs of our Responsible Gambling Council within BetMGM. 3. One of whom is Adam, who's the chief exec. One of whom is Raya, who's the chief compliance officer, and one of whom is Josh, who's the chief legal officer. So you can't get any more senior than that within BetMGM. There are 3 of the C-suite are co-chairs of the Responsible Gambling Council, and we meet every month. So it's absolutely at the heart of what we do. The philosophy is I've got it written down here to make sure I get it right, is to support informed decision-making to empower customers to gamble sustainably. So that's our philosophy. What do we do to deliver that? Well, we had a thorough check by the Responsible Gambling Council. We gained the prestigious Responsible Gambling Check accreditation, which is, the request was, can we look at your Ontario business? We said you can look at our whole business, look at the business across all of our states, look at everything. And the check accreditation is the highest award you can get from the Responsible Gambling Council. We achieved it before DraftKings and FanDuel. It's not a competition, but to show that we're trying to be as proactive as we possibly can. And the other thing that we make sure we have all the responsible gambling and GameSense messages in all of our advertising. And GameSense is interesting because GameSense have worked with MGM Resorts since 2017. And if you go to an MGM Resorts and you go to the M Life counter or the MGM Rewards counter, they have handheld devices where you can self-help yourself. You can look at videos and responsible gambling messages, and it's proactive player contact. Okay, and the company's called GameSense. We were the first digital operator to incorporate GameSense into what we do. So in September of last year, we added the GameSense pages onto our app. Okay, and GameSense essentially is a list of resources where you can go and just look at facts about responsible gambling and videos and what have you, and funny cartoons and stuff like that to basically enable you to start to have healthy habits as a player. Okay, that's the goal. Since we put those pages on our app, we've had 1 million page views, 1 million since last September. So this shows there's an appetite for the content, and it shows that it's something that we're absolutely right for us to deliver. And the reason we work so closely with GameSense is because they've worked so closely with MGM Resorts for the last 5 years or 6 years now. So I think I think, like I said, we won't make. I'm very reticent to say mistakes in the UK because I was there throughout the whole period, and I can see how it happened, and it's changed for the better. And there definitely were examples within various businesses, none that I've worked for, but within various businesses where mistakes were made. But on the whole, when you try and impose a set of regulations based on previous behaviours, there's always going to be some sort of anomalies there. But I think in the US we have an opportunity to, we've had the opportunity to start from scratch and have responsible gambling at the forefront of everything we've done, and we take it very, very seriously at BetMGM. Like I said, it's our number one priority.
I want to talk a little bit more about the US market in its entirety and kind of where things are heading from here on out. So the dust is somewhat settling, you could say, on the US market now, where the incumbents are, very clear who they are. Yourselves, FanDuel, DraftKings would be the clear top three, together with Caesars, that say forming a top four. And it's quite clear that the market is more and more becoming almost like an oligopoly between these four operators who together own something like 95% market share, something like that, along those lines. And we speak to a lot of startup founders in the space here, and it's becoming increasingly clear for these startups that the only four potential relevant customers are the four incumbents that we just mentioned, which makes it very difficult for the startups to establish themselves in this space, because if they aren't able to work with any of these four, they kind of don't have that much of a future. So it's kind of like four organizations that are supporting the entire kind of supplier network in the US in the US online gambling space. I want to talk to you about that because I got a question from someone, a startup, who wants to know from you, how do you best pitch your idea to yourself, for example? I mean, there's a lot of different suppliers who are fighting for space and who wants to be a part of the BetMGM portfolio, whatever type of supplier they are. But if you have a great product or a great service, or if there is something you want to pitch to Angus BetMGM, how do you best do that? How do you best go from the initial pitch deck to actually closing the deal?
Yeah,
with you?
I think it is difficult. Because, like you say, it's a space that's dominated by a few large operators. But we have I don't actually know the number off the top of my head, but tens of suppliers, and maybe even the hundreds of suppliers, and we've got over 1,200 games on some of our brands. On our native app we have less. We have less because of the restrictions there, but so we have a lot of content. And like I said, our players are, and again, this is slightly different to the UK. If I look on the UK, you'd have a core of really successful content that would be the same, year in, year out. And once you went outside that kind of top 20, there'd be a long tail of content that didn't necessarily perform very well. It's very different on our side. We're seeing, a lot of the content down to sort of the 500th game doing pretty well. So what I'd say to those suppliers is there's space for success, but you have to be very clear in what you're offering. And, for us, you have to understand our player and you have to understand our objective of what we're trying to achieve. So how are we as BetMGM going to sustain our number one position? Well, it's through leveraging the MGM brand and the MGM players. 60 million people on the MGM reward scheme. 30 million people, I beg your pardon. 30 million, it's half the population of the UK. 30 million people on the MGM reward scheme. This is unbelievable. So, we have 85 games that are built by our in-house studio currently. That number is going to increase this year as we start to get more Entain studios regulated in the US. But the games that do well have MGM branding. So it might be, a game with the MGM Bellagio on it, or MGM Riches, or whatever it might be. So for us, if a supplier comes to us and says, look, we've got this great game, the maths is proven, we'll try it, because like I said, Oliver that runs my gaming team, he used to work at Evolution. Before I came here, I used to work at Playtech. So we've worked on the supplier side, so we know what it's like. We know how hard it.
Yeah, you've been on the other side of the fence, right?
And it's hard, right? It's hard. I get it. So we're always open to the conversation, whether it's Oliver, whether it's Rob Passerino and his team. These guys are superstars, and we pride ourselves on having the best relationships with our suppliers. So the first thing I would say is reach out to us for sure, because we'd love to have a conversation always. But you've got to think a little bit differently, would be my point. And you've got to understand, what math. So I've started speaking American. What maths, as we say in Europe, what math models are you going to use that's going to be right for an MGM omni-channel player? What's going to, and if you can show that, if you can prove that, then I think you've got a chance for success. And then, it's still an embryonic sector. So there isn't much bingo in the US. There isn't, if you look at the bingo sector in the UK, there's a whole host of content that works within the UK bingo space that maybe hasn't been leveraged fully in the US, whether it's crash games, whether it's, the Lucky Tap content that's doing really well for us. Games of that ilk, scratch cards, whatever. I think there's other opportunities to kind of maybe move into a sort of another space within the game. We have poker, we have casino, and we have sports betting, and that's it really from our from a BetMGM point of view. So if there's something that allows us to look sort of tangentially at a different vertical, then that could be interesting. But if you're coming with a relatively standard slots portfolio, good luck, because you need money clearly to get regulated. But what I would say is you need patience, because it might take 3 months for the game to land with players if it's not prominent in one of the key positions. So what's the answer to your friend? Reach out for sure, and we'll definitely talk to them. And there's still space for success, I think, in the US.
Right. Think about the US
piece,
correct.
Basically. So again, zooming out on the US market, obviously BetMGM is doing really well on the online gambling side of the fence, but still you're only allowed to offer your services in 6 states today. And I would, through my conversations with kind of leaders in the online gambling space in the US, it seems like it's a bit of a disappointment at this stage that not more states have actually legalized, and there doesn't seem to be that much momentum for further states to go live. But what are your expectations, Angus? We do have some political support. Joseph Piadabo in New York is a great example of a state senator who is really pushing for the legalization of iGaming in the state of New York. But going forward a couple of years, like, is there any sign that further states can come back from the dead and legalize online gambling as well?
It's a great question. I think so. I don't worry myself too much with it, if I'm honest, Pierre, because we have huge teams of people that are working really hard on business development and the regulation for new states. All I would say is that we haven't got anything in our plan for this year. We don't think there's anything new coming in 2023. And I'm an optimist by nature, and I think what I'd rather focus on is the opportunity that gives us to really hone our operation. So by that I mean, let me give you, I have an EBITDA target to hit, right? I've got a P&L to manage. That's my target. Now, the easiest way to succeed there would be for the state of New York to regulate this year, or for the province of Alberta to regulate this year, or for Texas to change it, all that kind of stuff. What then happens is you have what we've had in the US over the last few years, which is a marketing-driven model. And we're totally ready for that, by the way. If those decisions came in, then fantastic. We'll take them with both hands. But a marketing-driven model where essentially you're driving active player numbers and gross gaming revenue through marketing activity is one model. And as new states do regulate, that's a model we'll follow. But the model we're following this year is an operational model of, look, this is what you've got. Work with what you've got. It's now down to your your product, your proposition, and your promotions. And that's, this is the stuff I love, if I'm honest. This is proper casino operations, and this is, what we're doing really well at the moment, which is great. So, I'm not close enough to how the states regulate and the intricacies of the politics within each state, and it seems to be.
It's not something that is a big focus.
It is for us as a business. It is for us as a business, but not for me as a VP.
But it's not something.
No, I think
No, exactly. Like
where you are is you're focusing on the markets that exist and make sure to
that's
optimize
it. And I work with what I've got, and if we get new states, then fantastic. But we had Ontario last year, which is continuing to grow. There's good rumours around Alberta. We'll see what happens at the end of this month. Potential for New York. There's a potential for Nevada at some point. I would say, to what you said earlier, the sector is starting to fall into some kind of shape, isn't it? Around who's going to be here, who's going to be here for a while, who might not stick around, which M&A activity is going to happen, are there any new incumbents going to come in, or is this what we've got? And then I think once that happens, that starts to give people a bit more security and stability around what's going on, and then we can see what happens then. But and then once the states that we're in start to report the tax that we pay and stuff like that, then people might be interested in at that time. But no, we work with what we've got at the moment, and I think so.
Yeah. So you mentioned, of course, and I mentioned too that the dust is settling a bit on the industry, and kind of as it stands today, the bigger is getting bigger, and the smaller is getting more and more difficult time to kind of cling on to any meaningful market share. We saw that obviously recently with the acquisition by Fanatics of PointsBet that peaked at a $4 billion market cap, but was sold at only a meager $150 million, 95% kind of decrease in market capitalization. Is there any way, in your opinion, for a smaller operator to survive under these type of market conditions? Or is this a market for the big players like yourself?
I don't know really. I mean, I've got so much to worry about with my own business that I think it's difficult. I think what I would say is I think if you're trying to compete across all areas as a smaller business, then you're going to need significant marketing pot. You're going to need deep pockets. And, I do think we'll see an evolution of the sector over the next couple of years as people start to focus more on EBITDA and net gaming revenue and start to move slightly away from marketing and gross gaming revenue, which we've already talked about. But I think if I was a smaller operator, I would try and focus very, very, very closely on one area of expertise. It might be, a particular sport that you're really going to focus on and really hone in on, and just try and find your space. And don't just assume that it's going to be a gold rush and you're going to sell the business for hundreds of millions of dollars, because we're moving on from that. And I think we'll see what happens over the next couple of years, and there's still a lot of M&A and stuff going around. But I think because of tax regimes as well, it becomes pretty prohibitive unless you've got a 5-year plan which involves spending a huge amount of marketing money.
Right. Zooming in again on BetMGM in itself, we talked a little bit here on the culture earlier, and kind of like the leadership that your CEO Adam Greenblatt has kind of brought to the table. Can you talk a little bit more about this? Like, how do you build a great culture? Like, what's so special with the BetMGM culture? And can you talk a bit more, perhaps, in specifics of Adam Greenblatt's leadership?
I'd love to.
Like, what's his style?
Happy to.
What's the point of his success?
So I there's a core group of the BetMGM leaders who used to work at Coral Interactive. So I knew a lot of the guys and girls before I came over. So Matt Prevost, who's the chief revenue officer, is someone I used to work with a long time ago. He's a friend of mine. and he came to me with the opportunity, and we discussed it. And frankly, to work with Matt was I'd always say yes to that, because I know Matt, I know what he's like, I know the type of culture he develops. So it was pretty easy to say yes to investigating the opportunity. And then I met Adam, and I've been doing this a long time now. I turned 50 last week, so I've recently turned 50. I'm now, I'm now officially
closer to 100.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So I'm now officially a veteran, I think, in everything that I do. So, and I've worked with some amazing people, some amazing people within the industry over the last 20, 25 years. And, he's as good as any of them. In fact, he's better in many respects. When it comes to clarity of communication, leadership skills, and emotional attachment to the business, as well as being super intelligent, he's as good as anyone I've ever worked with. And I think most importantly, he's a really good guy, right? And I'm lucky enough now that I can decide to work somewhere or not, and I can base those decisions on the project, but most importantly on the people. And you spend an hour in Adam's company, and it's very infectious, and you're hooked. So there's a regularity of communication which I think is probably his standout to other CEOs that I've worked with. So we do we call them the daily dose. They happen 3 times a week. These are 30-minute sessions that are chaired by Adam, every single one chaired by Adam. He talks about performance, he talks about the sector, he talks about anything that's going on in the space that is relevant to us. But most importantly, we share every single new person that joins BetMGM has to go on to the daily dose, has to put their camera on, has to introduce themselves, say what they do, say what they like. Everyone. And this is a business with, over 1,500 people now. So this is fantastic. And anything around the intercompany baseball league or the bowling league or whatever, that all gets brought up in these sessions, and as well as various deep dives into various things that are going on in the business. So, you join a business of the size of BetMGM, and you have face-to-face contact with the chief exec of that business, who will introduce himself to you, will ask you about yourself, and it's unique. I haven't seen it before, and that just enables a calmness, and I guess a sense of you are enabled to succeed within BetMGM, but you're supported by everyone from the top level down, and the leadership team are all very similar. The different personalities, but there's a real maturity and calmness to the business, which is very impressive for a business that's so young.
Amazing. And now, if we look outwards a bit to other organizations, the other incumbents, FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, I would imagine that you are looking closely at what those guys are up to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Is there anything that inspires you from the other incumbents?
Anything that inspires me? I think the lots, actually. I think they're doing some great stuff. Like you said at the beginning, which is very kind, we've recently won Casino Operator of the Year. We got 2 separate awards, and that means a lot. It means a lot to us because it's recognition that we're doing stuff right, but we're very aware that we have a target on our back, and DraftKings and FanDuel have both come out and said that they're trying to, they're focusing on iCasino and iGaming, and DraftKings were very quick to celebrate when they sort of got to the number 1 position in New Jersey in March. We won't make the same noise, but we reclaimed that position in April. So we're back to number 1 in that state. Yeah. We're back to number 1 in Michigan, so our 2 key gaming states. And I think, again, without being, we're certainly not ignorant of the threat that comes from those guys, and I will talk about some of the challenges or some of the opportunities that they seem to be doing better than us. But
yeah,
when I look at our opportunity to leverage the MGM brand with our colleagues at MGM Resorts, using the platform and the functionality and the content that's starting to come through Entain. So you've got the brand and the relationships with the retail colleagues within MGM, and then you've got the strength of the platform and the content coming through our partners at Entain. If we get that right and continue to drive our exclusive gaming strategy and continue to grow content that you can only play at MGM, frankly, whether it's games that you play in casino or whatever, or online, I think it's going to be very difficult to catch us at a net gaming revenue position. Now, what I would say is, I think in terms of engagement games, I think our competition do those really well. I think in terms of cross-selling sportsbook players into casino, I think our competition do that really well, and I think we can learn from those. But that's all stuff that's within our control. If we get that right, then we can compete with them at the same level. They can't compete with us at a brand level. They can't, because they don't have the retail strength that MGM has. So that's something that we have to focus on and have to leverage. But if you look at our sports partnerships, we've got exclusive games with the Philadelphia 76ers. They do roulette and blackjack with them. We've got slots for the Detroit Lions, Pittsburgh Steelers, New York Jets. We've got National Hockey League slots that are going out exclusively to us. We've got a slot for Buffalo Wild Wings, which is the biggest sports bar brand.
Right.
Yeah, sports bar brand in the US. Yeah. So, that's just what we're doing on our own, let alone what we're doing with our colleagues at MGM Resorts. And the reason I'm so enthusiastic about this and so optimistic about this is because I was there last week. I've been in meeting after meeting with my colleagues in retail who are as enthusiastic as we are. How do we make this the biggest gaming business in the world? How do we make sure we retain not only the number one position in North America, but across the whole world? How do we do that? If I walk into an MGM resort in Vegas, how does that experience then flow through to when I log on to BetMGM when I go home to Pennsylvania or New Jersey? So all these things are being talked about and being looked at in huge amounts of detail. And like I say, if we get it right and continue to work with the energy and the skill level of the people that we've got working on these things, then good luck to the competition, because it's going to be hard for them.
Spoken as a true ultra marathon runner who decided to run through the Sahara. Nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible. So we're going to start running off here a little bit now, Angus. But just a last question for you today. Are there any particular trends that interest you at the moment? One example from my side is Carolina Pelk's startup Beyond Play, which is kind of trying to introduce the social aspect in online gambling. Live spins are doing the same, of course. Are there any particular trends that interest you right now, or is there a potential major changes or kind of updated
so I think
new ways to enter the space?
There are some things that we're working on, like I've said, with MGM Resorts that I can't reveal here, but there are some, how do you replicate a casino experience, a real casino experience when you're at home? How do you really replicate that on your mobile device? I think that's going to be a really interesting development over the next few years. But also, by the same token, how do you replicate a digital experience in a retail venue? You go to Vegas and it's still, you've got banks of slots, you've got video slots, you've got roulette, you've got blackjack and what have you. But is there a way in which you can start to bring, entertainment as opposed to sort of pure gambling? Is a way you can start to bring those kinds of, whether it's game shows or what have you? How do you start to really leverage that in the retail venue? I think, I've got like I said, I've got a really strong bingo heritage, and I've worked in bingo a lot, and I love it. I love the sector. I love the game. I love the players, and I love the people that work in it in the UK. And I think there is a huge opportunity to look at how bingo is evolving. And you mentioned live play mobile. The stuff that those guys are doing is quite interesting, around, streaming and bringing gameplay into streaming and making it more of an entertainment proposition. So, I also think that if you look at a lot of the deals that have been done in the UK around entertainment brands, I mean, I did the deal for Britain's Got Talent and the X Factor, bringing them into the bingo space. How, you know, you look at all the brands that are on the strip at the moment, or, you know, we've launched the Wheel of Fortune casino, obviously, which is, you know, been live for a few months now, is really starting to motor. You know, can we target a different demographic with that proposition? So we know your traditional casino demographic, and I think we do pretty well at targeting that demographic. You know, our live casino business grew by, what was it, 225% last year or something. So that is a business that's an embryonic stage of its development compared to where it is in the rest of the world. So that will continue to grow and improve. But is there an opportunity to, I don't know. Is there a Wheel of Fortune bingo game, as an example? Is there something you can start to leverage that's going to start to target a female demographic? And then, to your point, is there a golden goose that allows you to offer non-sports content that has a kind of gaming feel to it? So then you can start to leverage the states that don't regulate online gambling at the moment, and maybe that's free to play retention games or what have you. So I think, you know, it goes back to your question around, if you're a supplier trying to look at the US, what would I do? That's what I would do. I would be coming to us, to DraftKings, to FanDuel, and saying, look, I can't compete with your young male casino player because you've got that covered. You've got IGT, you've got Light and Wonder, you've got, you know, Aristocrat, you've got all those guys, as well as all the big digital players. But what are you doing for a female demographic? What are you doing for the 50-year-old stay-at-home mum who likes to play bingo and plays Bingo Blitz, as an example, which has got millions and millions and millions of players? That kind of convergence into the social sector could be quite interesting.
Right. Yes, interesting. Watch this space and see what comes next. That's for sure. Angus, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here and to get to know you a little bit better. I hope we can keep this going, and the door is open for whenever you want to come back here. But I know you're a very busy man, so again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.